The most terrifying things Timur did during his reign. Timur Lane. What emotions come to mind when you hear this name? He is one of the most evil, dangerous humans to have ever walked the earth, and yet he was praised and honored for centuries on stage and in print by people he would have almost certainly have murdered if given a chance. Aside from a few obscure Victorian-era plays and poems, little is known about Tamerlane in the Western world. But he is well known to most historians. He has done some terrible things in his lifetime, which may still send chills down your spine. Let's look at some of the most horrific things he did during his reign. Skull Pyramids of Isfahan. Isfahan was an artistic, prosperous, multicultural, and intellectual Persian city. Religious freedom and civil coexistence fostered an environment conducive to the advancement of the arts, medicine, music, philosophy, and architecture. The city lacked an army of tough men to defend it at this point in its history. When the citizens saw the sky-consuming dust cloud of Tamerlane's many thousands of equestrian murderers approaching in battle formation outside the gate one medieval afternoon, they wisely surrendered without a fight. Tamerlane handled himself unusually rational at this time, sparing the city's residents from unnecessary slaughter. He left a garrison of troops to collect initial victory taxes and the booty from minor looting. His main army camped outside the city to plan future conquests and collect and distribute loot. He then gave the order to kill every man, woman, and child. His troops were given a quota for counting decapitated citizens' heads. Those soldiers who did not meet the quota would be executed. A historian recorded that the city's 28 towers of 1,500 skulls each were erected before the man who recorded the act stopped counting in disgust and horror. History's only real boogeyman. Spartacus, the slave rebellion's leader, and Hannibal, the brilliant and lethal general, were ancient Rome's boogeymen. But in order to fully comprehend what a boogeyman is, we must examine a specific instance of Timur's wrath as it played out during his revenge of Isfahan, as recorded by a Bavarian prisoner who witnessed what happened after the initial convulsion of slaughter. The prisoner claimed Timur ordered the women and children to be taken to a plain outside the city, that the children under the age of 7 be separated, and that his people ride over these same children. When his counselors and children's mothers saw this, they fell at his feet and begged him not to kill them. He refused to listen and ordered that they be ridden over. However, no one would be the first to do so. He became enraged and hung himself, saying, "Now I'd like to see who will not ride after me." They were then forced to ride over the children, who were all trampled. There were 7,000 of them. Under different conditions, the death of children as a byproduct of men's evil acts is essentially just that, a byproduct. Collateral damage sustained in pursuing a higher goal, whether conquest, looting, or battlefield glory. Tamerlane's actions were quite different. He is most likely history's only true boogeyman. Beheading of Baghdad. The sack of Baghdad in 1401 was one of Timur's most infamous military campaigns. Baghdad was part of the Jalairid Sultanate, which Sultan Ahmad Jalair ruled at the time. Baghdad was once the Abbasid Caliphate capital and an important cultural and economic center in the Islamic world. However, by the time Timur's invasion arrived, the city's prominence had waned, and it was no longer the powerful center it once was. Timur besieged Baghdad in June 1401, and the city fell to his forces after a brief siege. Following the sack of Baghdad, there was widespread destruction and loss of life. Tens of thousands of people were said to have been killed, and many of the city's historic buildings, libraries, and cultural treasures have been destroyed or looted. The alleged mass beheading of the city's inhabitants was one of the most harrowing aspects of the sack. Timur, according to historical accounts, ordered the execution of a large number of people, and his soldiers are said to have built towers or pyramids of severed heads as a grim testament to their victory. The practice of erecting towers of heads was not limited to the sack of Baghdad. Timur's forces were also known to do so in other conquered cities. Industrial slaughter in Delhi. Timur's invasion and sacking of Delhi is another infamous episode in his military campaigns. It occurred during Timur's invasion of the Indian subcontinent in December 1398. Delhi was the capital of the Delhi Sultanate, which Sultan Nasir-ud-Din Muhammad Shah Tughlaq ruled at the time. Timur invaded India in 1398, and his forces advanced quickly through the subcontinent's northern regions. He justified the invasion by claiming that he was fighting a holy war against the Hindu population, and that his duty as a Muslim ruler was to bring the region under Islamic control. The primary motivation for the invasion, however, was to plunder the wealth of the Delhi Sultanate. The forces of the Delhi Sultanate, led by Sultan Muhammad Shah, attempted to fend off Timur's advance, but were defeated in the Battle of Delhi on December 17, 1398. Timur's forces exploited the Delhi army's disorganization and internal divisions, and they won a decisive victory. Timur's forces entered Delhi and sacked it after the battle. The destruction and loss of life during the sack of Delhi were massive. According to historical accounts, Timur's forces engaged in widespread looting, killing, and destruction. It is estimated that 100,000 to 200,000 people were killed during the sack. Timur frequently justified his invasions and conquests in religious terms throughout his military campaigns, but his primary motivations were political and economic. Timur's wars were occasionally presented as a defense of Islam, but in practice he was more interested in expanding his empire and acquiring wealth and power than in religious ideology. As a result, depending on the strategic advantage, he was willing to form alliances with or attack rulers of any religious background. Timur engaged in a major battle against the forces of the Ottoman Empire, which was ruled by Sultan Bayezid I in 1402 at Ankara. Even though the Ottomans were a Muslim power, their conflict was about political rivalry rather than religious differences. The Ottomans suffered a significant defeat at the Battle of Ankara, with Timur's forces capturing Bayezid. The loss temporarily halted the Ottoman Empire's expansion and caused internal strife. Timur turned his attention to the island of Rhodes in 1402, following the Battle of Ankara, which the Knights Hospitaller, a Christian military order, controlled in the eastern Mediterranean. The Knights Hospitallers were involved in piracy and raids on Muslim shipping. Timur's forces besieged Rhodes, but were unable to take it. The Rape of Damascus. The sack of Damascus, also known as the Rape of Damascus, occurred in 1401 during Timur's Middle Eastern military campaign. Damascus, an ancient and culturally significant city, was part of the Mamluk Sultanate, which was based in Egypt and ruled over much of the Levant at the time. Timur launched a military campaign westward in 1400, targeting Mamluk Sultanate territory, including the cities of Aleppo and Damascus. Timur's forces turned their attention to Damascus after successfully capturing and sacking Aleppo, its governor, and a Mamluk garrison fortified Damascus. However, the city was less well fortified than Aleppo, and Timur's forces quickly breached the defenses. According to historical accounts, Damascus's governor attempted to negotiate with Timur, offering him valuable gifts and the keys to the city to avoid violence. Despite these efforts, the city was sacked and its inhabitants were brutalized. Damascus was sacked, and there was widespread looting, destruction, and violence. Many structures, including religious sites, palaces, and cultural institutions, were destroyed or damaged. The devastation was especially severe in the city's outskirts, where many buildings were destroyed. Enemy of the civilized world. Genghis Khan is the worst mass murderer in history, responsible for millions of deaths, but Tamerlane was a very close and respectable second. Hitler received numerical assistance from Stalin, and Mao's great social experiment resulted in many deaths due to incompetence and communism's distorted social views rather than direct cruelty. Tamerlane was quite the opposite. He rarely left anything resembling a functioning government in any of the lands he conquered, and regional trade was never a priority. Timur may be considered worse than Genghis Khan in some ways. Although Genghis had a much higher body count, life in their respective empires differed significantly. In his book, Genghis Khan and the Making of the Modern World, author Jack Weatherford stated that Genghis Khan's Mongol Empire created the nucleus of a universal culture and world system. According to Peter Fredet, a 19th century historian, never assuredly were their deeds of cruelty so awful and so multiplied, perpetrated either by Alexander the Great or any other conqueror except Tamerlane. Till the advent of Adolf Hitler, British historian John Joseph Saunders wrote, "Timur stood forth in history as the supreme example of soulless and unproductive militarism." Thank you for stopping by to watch. Please subscribe to the channel and post your video recommendations in the comments area if you want us to do more films like this.